Coming up on Tech News today, all the news from Microsoft's Build conference, where they promise a future of artificial intelligence bots while unsuccessfully trying to silence their weed-loving, potty-mouthed Twitter bot. Is Twitter spinning off their DM messaging function into a standalone app? And a full review of the just-released Oculus Rift. Spoiler alert, your cat is going to hate it. That's all coming up. Tech News Today is next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1481, recorded Wednesday, March 30, 2016. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Tracker, a coin-sized tracking device that pairs with your smartphone and keeps you from losing your most valued possessions. Visit thetracker.com and enter promo code TNT for 30% off your entire order.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by FreshBooks, the super simple cloud accounting software that's giving thousands of freelancers and small businesses the tools to save time billing and get paid faster. Try it free at freshbooks.com/TNT.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Today. I am Becky Worley, filling in for Jason Howell and Megan Maroney, the professionals who man the helm of this venerable podcast. They left it in my hands. Here's hoping I don't run it aground. All right, let's just get to it. Today is the kickoff of Microsoft's Build conference in San Francisco. Developers gathered to hear the company's vision for the future. We're going to dive deep into all of the major announcements with Brad Sams of Thurrott.com in just a second. But let's just run through our top non-Microsoft top tech stories first. Say that fast 100 times. All right, news percolating up today that AOL's Tim Armstrong is advancing on his quest to build a digital ad empire at Verizon. So let's recap. Verizon bought AOL last year. Armstrong not only shoring up content at AOL, acquiring the Huffington Post and TechCrunch, among others, but he's really been making a name for himself for his work behind the scenes, creating connections with ad agencies. Begs the question, why? Well, the business side of content. Armstrong is cementing the relationship between digital advertising and the content AOL's creating. He's got to get that revenue train back on track. But news today from the Wall Street Journal, they say Armstrong met with advertisers earlier this year and laid out what might be seen as an advertising data trifecta. So start with what people are looking at in their browsers, then where they are physically, and add in identifiers to help target ads more effectively in the future. So the example the Journal says that Armstrong laid out to these clients, it goes like this, quote, imagine if a hotel chain supplied Verizon with a database of its frequent guests that could be matched up with data on Verizon's more than 100 million wireless customers, plus AOL's own data, cookies, to target guests with ads for promotional offers. Then later, the hotel sales data and the telecom giant's customer data could be cross-referenced to see how many of those people subsequently visited the hotel. That was all a quote from the Wall Street Journal. Now, given Verizon's recent hand-slapping over super cookies that the EFF says allowed third-party advertisers and websites to assemble a, quote, deep permanent profile of visitors' web browsing habits without their consent, this seems like a further foray into a privacy, I think brouhaha would be a gentle way of putting it. So why would Tim Armstrong do this? If you think about it, he's got to compete against the likes of Google and Facebook, who have more than 50% of the digital ad market. That is no small feat. And what are some of the things that he can do to compete in that market? Well, number one, he can leverage the assets that he gets from Verizon, from AOL, providing even richer data. Then the other thing that's in play right now is acquiring Yahoo, another content creator that has millions, hundreds of millions of eyeballs every day, but lacks a strategy for taking that into a profitable or a more profitable region. And I think one thing that portends who may be the victor and why AOL is still on their feet here, although they have been acquired by Verizon. I was talking to someone who's recently left Yahoo, and we were talking about how Marissa Mayer approached sales. And she had a much more casual approach to the sales department and thought of it as something she could easily outsource, where you can see that Armstrong is making this his full-time business and really his full-time job. There was a citing that I read today saying that he had heard of some advertising executive who'd gotten sick while on a vacation, and Armstrong sent his private jet to get this ad exec home. So those relationships, very important for AOL, and really makes it fascinating to contemplate their purchase, the Verizon purchase of Yahoo, to double the eyeballs and combine sales for economies of scale. Now, this isn't the only Yahoo news today. Microsoft showing an interest in financing a Yahoo buyout. Now, this is not a straight purchase, but helping anyone else who might want to buy them. On CNBC, analyst Trip Chowdhury said the Redmond company could provide significant funds to help with a favorable buyout. What would make it favorable? Well, a deal that preserves the arrangement Microsoft has to provide search results to Yahoo. As you remember, in 2008, though, Microsoft's CEO Steve Ballmer attempted a $45 billion buyout that was ultimately unsuccessful. In the interim, Yahoo has used Microsoft for their search results. Now, Recode estimates a buyout today of Yahoo's core internet business would cost more like $10 billion. That's a nice $35 billion discount. Meanwhile, the activist shareholder suit from Starboard, that's a fund that owns about 1.7% of Yahoo stock, has taken a turn. Yahoo amended its bylaws today, stating that shareholders with 3% or more of a stake could nominate some new board members. How that plays out, the plot thickens. Despite the FBI's stand down on unlocking an iPhone from the San Bernardino case, the ACLU today published a map and data showing other instances of FBI requests to access a phone. The map shows 63 cases where the All Writs Act was used to demand access. 90% of those were made to Apple, but 10% to Google, which ACLU media strategist Josh Bell told Gizmodo ranged from drug trafficking to the distribution of child pornography. Google apparently complied with all of those requests, but a Google spokesman told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "We've never received an All Writs Act order like the one that Apple recently fought that demands we build new tools that actively compromise our product's security. We would strongly object to such an order." And that further reaffirms the issue that it's not the data per se that Apple was objecting to, but the methodology and the unleashing of a key or a tool that they would have no control over. Tomorrow, it's Tesla 3 Day. The newest iteration of Elon Musk's electric car will be unveiled, and little information is leaked on this, but Sam Jaffe, an analyst from Cairn Energy Research Advisors, has predicted that the Model 3 will have a range of about 225 miles per charge. Tesla has plotted production of the new cars to start in 2017. Pre-orders start tomorrow, March 31st. And we've gotten used to people lining up for new iPhones, around the corner of the store. But now images of people camping out at Tesla dealerships are starting to crop up on social media sites. Expected to retail for $35,000 before the $7,500 federal tax incentive, not to mention state incentives. The tents, the sleeping bags, the kumbaya for Tesla, it may get more intense as the night progresses. Now I want to turn to, as we promised, on this day of Microsoft's Build Conference, we are going to focus on all things Redmond. Brad Sams, a man who lives, eats, breathes Windows, he joins us. Brad, you were spotted in the audience at the keynote. We know you were there. Welcome.
Thank you. It was a great event, and I think Microsoft had a couple surprises up their sleeve. Things were leaking late last night, and then, Satya came out on stage, did what he did best, and really pumped up the Microsoft conversation. Now, one of the things that I think a lot of people were surprised by. And if you've been following for Microsoft for a while, it's not so much is that Microsoft is truly embracing the open platform. I think that was kind of the general overarching theme. And, you know, it was a good event. It was a good event, and the show is not over. They'll have a keynote tomorrow where they're going to be talking about more things. And I don't know, I'm really excited about what Microsoft did today. Talked a lot about Windows 10, talked a lot about their universal app platform. And they also gave us some tidbits about where they're heading in the future with this framework that they call the conversation platform.
Okay, let's dig into that. I think, you know, you just laid out a perfect tease for all the things I want to talk about, especially the excitement over command prompts. Woo! You know, when you mentioned that Satya Nadella, he tried to get developers excited about this conversations as a platform. And I like this quote that he put out: "We are on the cusp of a new frontier that pairs the power of natural human language with advanced machine intelligence." You know, you can't help but to contrast this on a historic day that Tay the chatbot returned briefly, possibly accidentally, swears a lot, brags about smoking weed. Those were today's developments from Tay. Yep. How do you interpret this juxtaposition, you know, with Satya Nadella really pushing this idea of, you know, AI and chatbots?
So this is really interesting. I actually know some of the people who worked on this department and who work within the AI section of Microsoft. Now, there's a saying when it comes to an experiment like this: all data is good data, right? Microsoft put out Tay, and before they even did that, they've had something similar running in China for months and had no issues. So they put out Tay, and of course, you know, people did what they do best on Twitter, and they figured out an exploit, and they really hammered this thing home and broke the platform. So for Microsoft, yes, this is a scar on one point, but any data scientist will tell you that, hey, we just learned a ton of information about how users perceive, how users take something we think is good and try to turn it around. And so, yeah, I think they screwed up here a little bit. Actually, what went live today, Microsoft told me, was a complete mistake. They were only supposed to turn it on in a dev environment, and they did it in production. Shame on them. And so today wasn't supposed to happen at all.
Yeah, all data is good data, but all press is not good press.
That is a very fair point. I think I wrote it up. I said Microsoft got some good data and some bad headlines. I mean, that's really what came out of Tay. Now, to your point, Microsoft is not stopping. They announced today this bot framework that is going to allow them to do more in this space. And it was a learning experience for them, I think for the public as well. But Microsoft is not stopping. They're going to take this AI framework that they're doing now, and they're going to extrapolate it. They're going to allow you to do little bot widgets and all over the place. And Nadella loves machine learning. Many people kind of forget that he got his start in Azure. That's what made Nadella famous inside of Microsoft, is for building up Azure, for building up machine learning. So he knows this space very well, and he's helping guide the big ship that is Microsoft into the right way. And AI is a new domain. There's a lot of people on many different sides of the fence about AI, and Microsoft is one of the players that says, hey, we need to move forward with it. This was very much a road bump in their path of democratizing AI and making people feel comfortable with it. And we saw the dark side of it. But Microsoft is definitely not going to slow down, and they're going to keep pursuing AI to the best of their ability, and they're going to integrate it into everything that they do. And it may not become a consumer or enterprise-facing product today, but once they get there, they're only going to learn in this space trial by fire. They can only do so many simulations with AI, because what happens in the machine world is completely different than what happens with the 7 billion people on this planet.
Okay, so that's a good point. And, you know, as you're talking about AI and bots, you know, one of the things I noticed in a lot of the live tweeting from the event was that basically they said every time the word bot was said, there should have been a drinking game, because it was such a huge focus. But in a way, I think, what does that mean to you? What example did he give of how a developer might utilize that seemed the most compelling in how Microsoft's trying to move the sticks forward?
Okay, so this is, I think we need to kind of take a step back here. What Microsoft has announced between this new bot framework, which, to be honest, Microsoft did a pretty poor job of explaining. If you try to go look for a press release about it, it's just all muddled in all these different places. You can't go to a single page that says, hey, here's all these bots, here's all the things they do. There's a couple reasons for that. One, I don't think they truly know what all the future of the bot is, because what they've built is a plumbing network on the back end of the internet. It's kind of like if you're familiar with if this, then that, or IFT as most people call it. Think of this as a steroid version of that platform. But one of the cool examples that Microsoft did not talk about online, what you can do with this bot, and this is more of an enterprise focus, but think about it this way. So inside of Microsoft right now, they have a bot that they built that from your phone or Skype or anything else, you can text it a name of a Microsoft employee, and it will tell you where their cubicle is. It looks up Active Directory, finds all that information, so you can find that person on their campus. If you're not familiar with Microsoft, anybody listening, around 100,000 employees, their campus is massive. So anybody on their smartphone walking around trying to get to a meeting, they text the name or the name of the meeting, and it queries Active Directory and gives them directions exactly to where their meeting is located. And this is just one of the ways that these bots are going to contextualize information that we have in these really micro segments. Microsoft is all about this nano process right now. They announced Nano Server. I believe tomorrow they might announce this function feature for Azure. But all it is a very tiny process that has one specific process, but it accomplishes a major goal. And they also showed up today inside of Skype, a bot that they built. So in a Skype conversation, let's say you need to reserve a hotel in New York City. By querying the bot, it can actually pull up the list. And mind you, this all happens with inside of Skype. You can actually reserve a hotel. I believe the information they used was for the Westin in New York City without leaving Skype.
So they're just basically trying to integrate it into a lot of other functionality and getting developers to do that. And I think
correct.
Where I wonder how developers accepted that piece of information as sort of the big headline. You know, last year's Build conference was the promise, better tools are coming.
Right.
Do you think that bots accomplished that, or, you know, the announcement of a suite today for developing once and porting to multiple formats, is this the fulfillment of that 2015 promise?
I don't know if this is the fulfillment of that 2015 promise. One of the feedbacks that came back from last year was Microsoft's goal last year at Build was to make bringing apps to Microsoft's platform easier. And while that's great and all that stuff, for developers, that's nothing to really get excited about, right? You're just making my job a little bit easier for work that I may or may not do. And what Microsoft actually said last year at the end of Build, what they learned is that what developers wanted was new stuff. They said they left Build last year saying all we learned how to do this year was just take stuff we've already done and bring it to Microsoft's platform, and they're begging us. And so what they were trying to convey this year is that Microsoft has new stuff that developers can get excited about. And what's interesting about these bots is that these bots, Microsoft, this is what they said. They believe that bots are going to be the new apps. Because the app world is, everybody knows it. It's very well distributed. There's apps everywhere. There's apps for everything. But these bots, they believe, are going to be the icing on the cake to what an app actually is. And they think this is where they're going to get a lot of developer interest, because they've built out a very user-friendly framework. You can code it in any language. It ties into many popular platforms like Skype, Slack, SMS, the whole Office suite, email. And so this is essentially a new environment that developers can go and play in that isn't oversaturated with apps that remind you at 5 o'clock to wake up.
Sidebar, when they talk bots, I think malware. So they're going to have to redefine our perception of what that word means. Now, giving developers something cool, let's talk HoloLens. Dev kits start shipping today. I saw a lot of buzz about one developer, 8/9, they created a proof of concept app for Citibank. We have some video of that. It makes a really compelling case for mixed reality as a tool, not a toy. It's a multi-display workspace with a virtual reality, sort of almost Edward Tufte-like data display above the open space on the desk, where a trader is pulling information out and really manipulating that both with gesture and with HoloLens. What do you think? Did this do it for the crowd? So the way Microsoft has been pitching HoloLens ever since its inception is that it is an enterprise-first product. They kind of did a disservice to themselves when they showed off a bunch of games. But what they have been saying for a while is that we need to get this into the enterprise world for a couple reasons. One, the dev kits, as you know, are $3,000.
That is not cheap. So what they're doing here is trying to show alternative use cases other than, I don't know, you're building a house and here's a different look from an architectural view. To be honest, I don't really know if this was the best demo that they could have done, because the financial trader is a different kind of beast, right? You know, they just spend on timing is very important to them. So any sort of latency with this stuff, there's generally a lot of emotions in trading, and the HoloLens isn't typically thought of as robust hardware that can be thrown across the room. But I think they were just trying at this particular instance to say, hey, here's an alternative use case. They also know that these financial industries are looking for any sort of advantage that they can get. We all know timing, but if they can find different ways of making their employees have more screens, be more productive, then they want to show that off. And I think this was just one idea where they wanted to get out of the manufacturing sector and say, okay, here's something else you can do, but I don't really know if this was like the piece de resistance for HoloLens.
Leo turned me on to this show called Billions, all about hedge fund traders, and I am sure now that this is going to end up on next season's an episode next season where some trader has HoloLens on it. Let's finish up with just some nuts and bolts. Windows 10 anniversary update, Redstone 1. What, where, when? Top line it for us. What do we need to know?
So, Windows 10 anniversary update. You mentioned earlier that Microsoft in their naming, the bots isn't a great name. I'm not so sure about anniversary update is the greatest update, because what comes, like, let's say they push an update in November. Are they going to call that the annulment? Like, what's like what is this, Microsoft? They should have called it the July update or whatever, and then, said, hey, and done some other marketing. Anyways, the anniversary update. Microsoft is calling that the next update to Windows 10. So if you're familiar with Redstone, which you are, Redstone 1 is anniversary update. It's the same thing. This is just the public-facing name for now, unless they change it. And so what this is going to bring, and I don't fully believe Microsoft went into all the details. So there's going to be improved biometric support, meaning Windows Hello support for apps. Windows Hello support for websites can now tie into it through Edge. And then we're also going to see some app improvements as well. But I think there's going to be more general UI enhancements that Microsoft isn't quite ready to show all the cards yet. I think they just wanted to give some of the tidbits about what it's going to be. And one of the things that we know, based on the word anniversary update, I had initially heard that this release was coming in June, but anniversary, Windows 10 launched in late July, which makes me think that this is when they are going to try to have these bits ready for public consumption.
Brad, you are so knowledgeable in all things Windows. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell folks where they can follow your work online?
Certainly. You can find me on Twitter at BDSams, the executive editor of Petri.com and also of Thurrott.com. And thank you.
Windows build, Microsoft build. Phew, we got through it, folks. Let's take a second now to thank our sponsors.
Thank you, Becky. Hey, let's thank the sponsor of Tech News Today, and that's Tracker. With advancements in technology, we have all sorts of smart things. Smart cars, smartphones, smart homes. But when you lose things, you lose your possessions, you don't feel so smart. I've got a good one for you. Check this out. I know you've probably experienced this, the TV remote, and just kind of losing it throughout the house. You never really know where it is when you want to watch something, right? You're held hostage by the fact that your remote isn't there and you can't control your TV, even though you need to and you want to right now. Where is it? Is it under the couch? Is it in the kitchen on the countertop for whatever reason? Is it upstairs in one of your kids' bedrooms? Because I know my kids, they will take anything and move them around if it isn't bolted down. You just attach the tracker to, let's say, the remote, and you'll never lose it again. You'll know exactly where it's hiding. Tracker makes losing things a thing of the past. It's a coin-sized device. It locates misplaced keys, wallets, bags, computers, even pets in seconds. You pair Tracker to your iOS or Android device, attach it to anything. It has a key loop, or you can also attach it with adhesive, and find its precise location with a tap of a button. It's that easy. You lose your phone, all you have to do is press the button on the Tracker device, and your phone is going to ring, even when it's on silent. So it kind of works to help you find your phone too. The Tracker Bravo is constructed with beautiful anodized aluminum for the thinnest and most durable tracking. With over 1.5 million devices, Tracker has the largest crowd GPS network in the world. So your lost item actually shows up on a map, even if it's miles away. If an item happens to go missing, the Tracker app records its last known location on a map. And then when another user of the Tracker app comes within a 100-foot range of your lost item, you will receive a GPS update of where your item is. Go to thetracker.com and never lose your possessions again. Plus, just for our audience, if you enter promo code TNT, you're going to get 30% off your entire order. That's thetracker.com, promo code TNT. Spell it TRACKR.com, promo code TNT for 30% off your entire Tracker order. And we thank Tracker for their support. All right, Becky, I know there's a lot more news to talk about. Back to you.
Indeed there is. Welcome back to Tech News Today. I am Becky Worley, filling in for Megan Maroney and Jason Howell, who is here in spirit and on tape. But I'm very happy right now to have Recode's Kurt Wagner joining me to talk social media news. Kurt, you are just publishing stories left, right, and center. Hours before we were, just an hour ago, I saw you published a story that Twitter floated the idea of making their direct messaging feature into its own standalone messaging app. Is that right?
That is right. Yeah, it's actually an idea that's been pitched internally multiple times, I found out. Most recently was just a couple weeks ago. I think the good news for people who love Twitter the way it is now is it doesn't sound like this is actually something that they're going to carry through, but kind of a fascinating idea, right? I mean, there's a lot of tech companies that are kind of building these standalone messaging products. There's a lot of value they see in kind of connecting people with retailers or shoppers or brands. Twitter would love to do all those things, but right now they don't have a standalone messaging app. So the idea was intriguing, but sounds like they're going to stick with DMs for now is what I'm hearing.
Well, considering the turnaround efforts that they are working on, it doesn't seem like the worst idea, but is that decision to stay with it the way it is because they're too late to the game?
It's a little tough to tell. I think that is a very valid argument, right? Facebook has had Messenger now. I like to compare the two because Facebook's really the one that seems to be driving this whole idea of a one-size-fits-all messaging app right now. They've had Messenger for a long time. They initially kind of forced people to use it. It's almost been 2 years now since they did that. They've already got all kinds of partnerships set up. Twitter, if they were to break out the app right now or break out DMs into its own app, it would really be far behind. And I think that the value of having maybe an app that they can move quicker on might not be the best use of their time, as opposed to simply trying to build within the existing product that they already have. It's a little tough to say. I feel like they're kind of late to the game and that it's better at this point to just kind of say, all right, we're not going to do standalone. Let's go ahead and focus on the DM that's in the app and how can we make that better. But I think that's the thing. That's the thinking that they're just behind the game.
Hypothetically, how would they monetize something like that? Or is it just to increase engagement?
Well, I think the monetization, you could really look at what Facebook's doing, right? Which is essentially letting people connect with retailers. So if you are shopping on Twitter and you want to, chat back and forth with a brand about maybe an order that you placed, you can immediately hop into the DM app if it was a standalone app, or I guess in theory the DM feature they have now, and go back and forth about the order, the sizes, the prices. Messenger is doing things with Uber and Lyft and even airlines so that you can book travel through those apps. You could do the same in theory with Twitter, and then maybe Twitter gets a cut of whatever sales that they drive. So you could see a lot of kind of commerce potential with the idea of connecting customers with the brands that they shop with. But right now, that's just kind of an idea. It hasn't really happened for anybody except for like WeChat over in China. But a lot of folks are trying to bring that here to the United States as well.
One part of this that made sense to me was the idea of our public persona now has a messaging app. So, we're different outward-facing people in different social media formats, and Twitter's so much more public because it's public by default. And so I could see an instance for that, but I just don't know if most people see enough of a distinction to make that worth creating a different entity.
Yeah, that's the concern, right? It's like, what's going to really spark you to download a separate app when you maybe already have 3 or 4 or more ways that you're connecting with people on a private level, right? Because Twitter has always been this public conversation platform. Do they really want to spend time working on a private feature like that, I'm not really sure it's the best use of time. And I don't really know what, how you would convince someone that it's worth kind of going through that process of downloading that app and really spending a lot of time in it.
Another item of interest, a few years ago, and you wrote about this, it seemed like 18 to 34-year-olds were fleeing Facebook, heading to Instagram, Twitter, then Snapchat hit the landscape. Facebook seemed like it was just a place where teens and 20s were posting mom-friendly pics, communicating with aunts, uncles. But you've just posted that new data seriously contradicts that.
Exactly. So we've been sitting around and the narrative has been like, oh, young people don't like Facebook anymore. It's not cool. Their parents are there. Their grandparents are there. They're going to all these other services. I think some of that's true, right? I mean, I think Snapchat and Instagram, for example, are increasing in popularity. But some data from ComScore that we got our hands on this morning, I mean, it showed the comparison of the percentage of reach among that age group, 18 to 34, and then the amount of time spent within all these apps. And you can see there on the chart, Facebook is just far and away the most popular app for that age group of any of the social apps. And so kind of just like threw a little cold water on this whole idea that, oh, Facebook's struggling to retain young, users, teens, whatever it may be. Certainly doesn't look like it from that data.
And just to quantify, for those of you who are listening and aren't watching, Snapchat has just under 400 minutes of monthly engagement for this age group. Instagram, more like 300. Tumblr, 200. And then Facebook is 11, maybe just shy of 1,100 minutes per month in the
Right.
18 to 34. So that really, that kind of deep engagement is something that is absolutely money.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're an advertiser and you reach that audience, which is a prime audience, right? I mean, young people, and you see this chart, is there really any question where you want to go spend your money? I mean, I don't think it's any surprise that Facebook's market cap right now is almost, like $340 billion versus like Twitter that's closer to $15 billion. So, this is prime eyeballs for advertisers, and therefore it's prime business for Facebook.
Time spent on social media sites, really on any site, is increased with the amount of video that they have. So word on the street, Mark Zuckerberg is obsessed with live video. As a veteran myself of this fickle medium, he learned how things don't always go as planned. We have a video of Zuckerberg doing a live sort of walk and talk, taking viewers through their insane campus in Menlo Park. And he's badging into the Oculus Rift testing area, his all-access pass, guys in the hallway saying, hey, Mark, what's up? Hi, Mark. Just a little bit of kissing up there. And then he goes to enter the super top secret Oculus Rift testing area, badges, gets denied. That just cracked me up.
I was just sitting at my desk, literally laughing out loud when I saw that, and it wasn't anything against Mark. It was actually kind of cool to see him in like a real life human scenario, because so much of the time you see these CEOs, they're scripted, they know exactly what they're saying. So to see him try and badge in, you assume of all people, Mark Zuckerberg can get into any room in the Facebook building he wants, but he was locked out of that Oculus, lab, and I just thought that was hilarious. That was pretty funny.
I find him more and more endearing, mostly for his social awkwardness and being completely oblivious to it, and the fact that he just goes for it with this stuff. Also, every time I see him talking now, it seems weird to me that he's not speaking Chinese. I just watched that video over and over again, and The other thing, I need your advice, Kurt, being the Silicon Valley insider that you are. I moonlight for Good Morning America. That's my other gig. And I'm doing a story next week about $1,400 hoodies. So, I think Mark Zuckerberg is responsible for starting this trend. What can you tell me about the San Francisco Silicon Valley hoodie scene right now?
The hoodie scene, it's strong. I can tell you it's strong. I myself have been known to wear a hoodie around. I still see them around. I think he tweeted he would not tweet. I think he posted a great photo to his Facebook feed when he came back from paternity leave. It was like, what should I wear today? And the photo was like all gray V-neck T-shirts and all the same color hoodie. Like he has just a closet full of the same outfit, which I found to be it was just really fun. And
Jobsian.
Very Jobsian. And I think you bring up a good point that he is kind of endearing. And the fact that, especially now that he's a father, he's kind of shared a lot of photos of him with his wife and him with his new daughter. I think it kind of humanizes him in a way that not a lot of people had seen before. And, you can set his business tactics aside. I think he's a pretty ruthless businessman when he needs to be. But you kind of get a glimpse into his personal life that you don't get with a lot of other CEOs just by the nature of the product that he's built. And I think that's kind of fun. It's fascinating to cover a company like that.
Hoodies now with baby spit up.
With babies, all babies.
Kurt, thank you so much. Tell folks where they can find your work online.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. You can read all of our great work at Recode at recode.net and follow me on Twitter at KurtWagner8.
All right, Kurt. Thank you much.
Thank you, Becky. Bye-bye.
As we just saw there, Mark Zuckerberg trying to gain entry into the Oculus Rift super secret lab. A clear indication that if that guy can't get in there, that the virtual reality wave is officially cresting. The momentum is strong here. The first Oculus Rift was delivered to people who pre-ordered, but the very first pre-order made by Ross Martin of Anchorage, Alaska, got a special delivery. Oculus founder Palmer Luckey flew the Rift up to the 49th state and did the handover in person. Luckey, an aficionado of the Aloha shirt and the SoCal look, he says it was a great experience, but he wishes he hadn't worn flip-flops to Alaska in April. That is not a virtual reality. That is a painful one. For those of you wondering if you should get an Oculus Rift delivered to your home, maybe by the UPS guy instead of a multimillionaire, you're going to want to hear what our next guest has to say. Mashable's Chelsea Stark joins us now to run through the darling of the VR world. Hey, Chelsea, I just looked at your review. It was gorgeous. What a deep and thorough look.
Thank you so much, Becky. For a flagship product like this, we really wanted to give it the star treatment, right?
What was the top line of your takeaway from actual hands-on? Did it live up to expectations, and what were your expectations?
I've been tracking VR since Oculus, just sent the DK1 to Kickstarter backers. So, coming from so early in VR to like what we're seeing now, one, I was just incredibly impressed. Sorry about the cat. And two, I was just really excited to see like how Oculus managed to basically like create something really, really immersive. And they really got the sense of presence that they were like aiming for.
Were there any surprises in the actual retail build that you hadn't expected from what you'd seen prior?
Yeah. No, I mean, they've been showing the retail build since E3 of last year. So, the biggest surprise for me was, I guess, now that I actually had it in my house, as opposed to doing demos at trade and things like that, it was just like how really immersive VR is. Like you don't even know what time it is. Like there's no way to look away at your phone or anything else. It's just like you're in that world. You're in that headset. You have to literally tear it off your face to find out what is going on outside of you, so, like VR.
That's such a good point, because we're so distracted now with all of our devices that it's only our devices that can really hold our attention. So something that physically excludes all distraction is probably one of the only things that can hold our focus beside just discipline. How long did you play with it for the first time or first couple times you used it?
And I played like the first time for like 2 hours. I was playing Adrift, which is a really immersive first-person game where you're an astronaut floating over the Earth. Your space station has just kind of exploded, and you're trying to get it back online and figure out the mystery of what's happened and your crew and everything. So it was like, wow, I'm like it's a very like deep and kind of chilling game. I stayed there playing for 2 hours and didn't even realize that much time had passed.
When you walk out of the movies and you've gone for a matinee, it's almost surprising that it's still daylight out. And I know that you can have that experience gaming, but was it exacerbated with VR?
Yeah, you know what? It almost like reminded me of being maybe not everyone had this experience, but being a kid and like binging on TV for 8 hours, you kind of like get that, you have that like hangover feeling afterward. You're like, oh my God, I just consumed so much media. And then you're done. You're like, oh, that's weird, but it was great.
What's your advice to anyone who's really thinking hard about this purchase?
I mean, I think honestly, if you pre-order right now, you're not going to get your Rift until July. So maybe just wait a little bit. Like to, think about, do you have a computer that can run this thing first? You need a Windows PC. It needs to have like a very intense graphics card. So if you're really willing to put that money down, if you're want to play games all the time, like that's totally something you should invest in. But for the rest of us, like this is just something that's going to help VR rise to the top. So I think it's really great.
So you were Skyping with us for maybe 10 minutes, including the time you were holding before here, and your cat clearly took umbrage at that. So how pissed at you was she after that 2 hours of gaming? And is this VR experience going to really downgrade her quality of life?
Oh man, it's going to be so hard. It's funny because, will we forget to feed our pets? Will we forget to like pick up like hypothetical children from school? Like what work deadlines are we going to miss? Like,
this is the moment when I start screaming out, Wally, Wally.
Oh man. I mean, as soon as you find that one thing that really hooks you, like especially for more intense applications, like intense games, or like maybe an app where you're painting or creating art or something like that. It's just like, if that clicks with you and you get in that zone, you're going to be in there for a while. What
do you want to see in VR now that you've experienced it in your own home? What games, what experience, what became clear to you that like, oh, I want this content?
Oh man. What I'm really excited about once we get kind of more hand controls in VR, like I've played this game, the app Tilt Brush, where you're like painting in VR. And so I actually think the creative stuff where you're being like have so much creative control is like really compelling. And that's the stuff I want to do, where it's like using VR to build stuff. I also think like really situations where we can actually kind of walk a mile in someone else's shoes and like really get empathy for them. I think that those are so much more compelling in VR. So I see that like for documentaries or other things like that. That's just going to click once we, get the technology really comfortable.
Chelsea Stark is from Mashable.com, and her review there of the Oculus Rift is fabulous. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Becky, for having me.
For those of you, Chelsea mentioned that you really need to have an incredibly powerful computer, Windows machine, to use VR. And before the show, Leo was telling me that he's getting his Oculus Rift on Friday, and that tomorrow. And the new screensavers will have their ultimate gaming machine, which is now Virgum, ultimate VR gaming machine. And that will be on Saturday on the new screensavers. All right, we are moving to TNT's fan of the day. It's at Rodaddy on Twitter, who says he watches TNT, quote, while working from home and coming away. I think he meant coding away, but I like the idea of this multitasking. By the way, I listen to TNT while I'm cooking away. Show us how you watch or listen to the show. Just record a video, take a picture of yourself or your setup, post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and Megan and Jason are going to find it. Hey, stick with us through the break, because when we come back, a free and easy way to stick it to the supreme leader, Kim Jong-un. But first, let's take a minute to thank the sponsor of this episode.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by FreshBooks. Listen, you've got your VR goggles, and I get it. You want to spend some quality time with them. But if you're a small business owner or a freelancer, you might be too buried in the reality of paperwork to spend time in virtual reality. But now there's FreshBooks. Our friends at FreshBooks have created ridiculously easy-to-use cloud accounting software that makes dealing with your taxes way less taxing. Getting started on FreshBooks could not be easier. even if you're not a numbers person. You can create and send invoices efficiently, plus get paid online quickly with FreshBooks payments. You also have the option to request a deposit in FreshBooks and get paid upfront. No more covering costs out of pocket or waiting until the end of a project to get paid. And they have made it incredibly easy for you to track your billable time. FreshBooks recently announced their new EMV chip card-enabled reader. I have one right here. Here's a little thing. Isn't it so cute? This reader just fits in your pocket or your purse, and then you just stick it into your device, and you can get paid. It's already really popular with IT professionals like home computer repair and maintenance, as well as the trades. Now you can easily accept credit cards wherever business takes you, quickly and securely with their entirely redesigned iPhone app, plus create beautiful invoices in just seconds. With FreshBooks, you can focus on what you love most, growing your business. You'll wonder why you didn't start with FreshBooks sooner. Getting started is simple, and it's totally free for 30 days. Go to freshbooks.com/TNT, and don't forget to enter Tech News Today in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Start your 30-day free trial today, and we thank FreshBooks for supporting this episode of Tech News Today.
This next item is news to me. It's been around for a while, so you may know about it, but is it ever old news when you can stick it to a totalitarian dictator? No. Flash Drives for Freedom had a booth at South by Southwest last week. They're a nonprofit organization. They're based in Palo Alto in the Silicon Valley, and they ask for any old flash drives that you may have. They fill the drives with Korean language news, Wikipedia entries, ebooks, pop songs, soap operas, and then they smuggle them into North Korea to distribute them covertly. The founders say they got 7,500 of the drives into Korea last year, and they're shooting for 25,000 this year. I love it. I am totally sending them a truckload of old USB sticks from all the press releases I get on USB. Some of them have some of my, old taxes maybe. So I think I will be scrubbing the data clean before releasing them for obvious prudence. But especially, after that Sony hack situation attributed to the North Koreans, I don't really want Kim Jong-un getting any of my personal data. On that note, thank you for joining me today. This solo hosting, I give Megan a lot of credit. She did this by herself for a long time. Tomorrow's guest host, though, Tom Merritt. Yeah, it's going to be just like 2010 when we started this show together way back then. TNT records live every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 12 a.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be a part of the show by emailing tnt@twit.tv. You can leave a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. You can also find the show on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. And if you're so inclined, I am at Worley on Twitter. Thanks to all of you for watching.